Explaining entertainment, keeping you ahead of the culture curve. It's what we do each and every day here on the WDW Pro channel. So excited to have all of you here with us, and so excited that Legal Mindset has been able to drop by and help us untangle some legal quandaries we have that regarding Jonathan Majors and the situation that has the MCU, Marvel Entertainment itself, sitting there on pause as they try to figure out what the heck to do with their big baddie, who now has some major and also big bad accusations levied against him. What do you do when you don't have an answer and won't have an answer all the way until May, even while you try to plan out where your movies are going? Before we get into this exciting and intriguing content, folks, if you like content like this, consider clicking the like button, share, and subscribe. And you can stick it to the algorithms when you click it. We're talking about that notification bell. Don't forget to drop a comment down below. We covet your comments. We care about what you think. Here we go. Now, Andrew, I received an email from an attorney in Southern California giving me some info and some thoughts on what's going on with the Jonathan Majors situation. To do the quick recap for everybody, Jonathan Majors allegedly made a phone call letting officials, we don't know what officials, but presumably medical officials, know that his girlfriend, we think, was having some sort of mental crisis. Upon arrival then also of law enforcement, she gave some sort of testimony and may have had apparent injuries that resulted in Jonathan Majors' arrest. Then later on, we were told by the attorney representing Jonathan Majors that the girlfriend had recanted. And so many people just thought, well, this is now no longer something substantial. It's a nothing burger because the charges will be dropped. She's recanted and therefore will move on. But that has not occurred. The district attorney and the prosecutor have not decided to drop anything at all. But this probably follows a pattern that, if we're savvy with the law and savvy with legal proceedings, is not all too uncommon. So before we dive into this email, Andrew, give me your thoughts on sort of the process that we're looking at in terms of how this goes for typical men and I guess also for Marvel stars.
Yeah, there's no distinguishment in the law that says if you're a Marvel star, this law doesn't apply to you, right? And no matter whether you're the biggest star or whether you're a normal person, the law applies to you. Something that Alec Baldwin is finding out right now. So if we look at this in a typical situation, it's a man and a woman, whether you're dating, whether you're married, whether you just met this woman 10 minutes ago, you're over at an apartment, you're together in what looks like a home. Somebody calls the officials, whether that's medical, whether that's police. They show up. There is anything, and I mean anything, that can be construed as domestic violence. They have a duty to follow up on that. In many states, there is a policy, there is a procedure called mandatory arrest, which is binding upon the officers, because there was a case, an older case, where a long time ago, there was a domestic violence situation where this guy was beating up on his wife, and she kept calling. They would never take the husband. It happened several times until eventually the husband, be very abusive, eventually killed her, right? So after that, they implemented a policy, once again, an overcorrection, that whenever there's a domestic violence case, they have to take somebody. They have to arrest somebody. And when they look, the criteria for who they arrest, pretty much in most of the scenarios, 90+%, I would beg to say 99%, but definitely over 90%, is the man, right? In a man-female relationship, in a lesbian relationship between two women, obviously that's more complicated, or in a gay relationship between two men, that obviously would be more complicated. But a lot of the factors are size, strength, and they're just going to presume that against the man, in this case, Jonathan Majors. So they're going to go through those factors, and if they saw an injury on her, they saw anything that looked like an injury, even a psychological injury could be enough. They can say, hey, we're placing a domestic violence charge against you presumptively. And so here's the way domestic violence works for most men. Even if the woman later on says, he didn't do it, he didn't hit me, this is not an attack, nothing bad happened here, everything was okay, the prosecutors do not care. They don't care. They're against you as a guy seeing that presumptively, because they believe you have her under your spell, under your, alpha male secret spell, that she's in this loop, she's in this abusive loop, and you've got her under your spell. So they don't listen to you. They charge you. they pursue you. So bring this to the present case here, where you have a potential recanting, her saying that I wasn't attacked. They're going to say, look, we showed up. We saw her injuries, whether they were psychological, physical, whatever else. We believe she was a victim of domestic violence. Doesn't matter what she says anymore. Doesn't matter if she backs down. Now the state is involved, and now you're dealing with Big Daddy State in these charges. So he's got real danger of becoming inflicted with a domestic violence charge here, just like many other men face in America. This is a giant problem.
So let's take a look now at the content that was sent my way by this attorney in California. Here's essentially, we'll skip the parts of the email that allowed me to corroborate some things so that I was willing to bring this forth into a video, but let's dive straight into the material. The email says the victim recanting her original complaint and providing a new statement is not only typical, it is rather like the formula in domestic violence cases. This is so much the case that a DV assignment is usually part of the training ground for young prosecutors, because you have to learn how to put it on a case in front of a judge and jurors with a victim who is lying to you and still prove it. Someone saying, quote, the victim changed her story, unquote, is a domestic violence case may as well also add the Pope is Catholic or water is wet. This happens because 90+% of these types of cases follow an exact formula. A turbulent couple gets in a fight. The stronger, more temperamental one attacks the weaker one. And let me say, too, I'm going to insert here that there have been psychological studies that men and women are aggressive in different ways. So I just want to insert that in there. I think that's important to say.
Very
Police
important.
are called and arrest one or both. They make up and get back together because they're codependent and often share children and or finances. And then also, I'm going to insert here as well, that when you're dealing, again, this doesn't come from the email. I'm inserting this one on my own. When you're dealing with someone who is a celebrity, they have immense power. The power sharing in this situation is not equal. And so whether or not Jonathan Majors is innocent or guilty, or whether or not the girlfriend is innocent or guilty, or whether or not this is an over-prosecution by someone who is corrupt and taking advantage of the spotlight here, the bottom line is that if you're looking at this from a leverage standpoint, one individual might have every reason to recant theoretically simply because of an imbalance of power. So take it away, Andrew. What do you think about this from an attorney from California telling us, some thoughts he had?
Well, obviously, I'll say, look, you're in California, you're going to have a strong bias towards certain narratives there. But I think that saying that, look, it's going to be, there's this pattern, there's this abusive pattern. That's true in certain circumstances where you have, patterns of violence, where you have reoccurring violence. But in the first time scenarios, when, you're having somebody who's called, making these same presumptions is not as true. And I would actually question a lot of the statistics. And like you said, men and women commit damage against each other and violence in different ways, right? Psychological, economic, those are things that
and also to themselves, Andrew. Women try to terminate their own lives at a far greater number, a far greater rate. But men are highly more successful at it.
Yes, that's the big difference there in that statistic. So women attempt suicide, but fail more often than men, right? So once again, they attempt but fail. And the logical conclusion of that is at least certain number of those. Now, why some of them may be authentic attempts, there is a certain number that are clearly for attention, that are clearly a cry for help, that are clearly a way to get people to pay attention to them because they need that attention for one reason or other. Maybe a valid concern, maybe a valid need for attention. But men, if they commit suicide, by and large, go out and successfully commit suicide. They go out and they do it at a very large rate. The successful rate of suicide for men, by the way, is increasing. It is staggering in the United States, the suicide rate. So that being said, you also have situations like with Courtney Clenny in that case, where that's an interesting one, the OnlyFans murder case, where she stabbed her boyfriend who ultimately died. But these are people that believe, and you're going through the transcripts and the history, that they can hit themselves, that they could hurt themselves, people like that. And they'll call the police, and the police are going to believe them because they're a woman, right? So they can self-inflict a wound. They can, punch themselves in the eye, slap themselves in the face, leave a red mark, leave a scratch mark on themselves, say it was their boyfriend, and off they go, carted off to jail, got rid of a restraining order, right? That's increasingly used as a relationship tactic in highly, highly problematic, codependent relationships, which unfortunately are more and more people as we progress, down this societal downfall. So I think we have to be more and more skeptical of this. I think we have to be more and more scrutinizing of these scenarios. And I certainly don't believe in mandatory arrest. I'm no fan of that policy from
well, and let's also say too that if you out there are someone who is watching this video and you are in a negative or abusive relationship, if you are in a codependent situation that is unhealthy, or if you are struggling with any kind of mental health issues, seek out someone for counseling, somebody who is certified in that sort of area. Seek out someone who is someone that you can trust and has your best interests at heart, and try to untangle these very difficult situations that people find themselves in. We are not blinded to the plights of many people out there. No. We understand that there are very tricky and sticky situations that can get us all very down and out. And we highly recommend that if you're out there, that you remember that you have great worth and that there is a better day out there for you if you take those right steps towards it. So we encourage all of our viewers in that way.
And absolutely. And one thing I always say is, look, I believe in prosecuting and investigating all crimes, right? I believe in investigation. The prosecution of that, right, is a different story. Whether all crimes should be prosecuted, should be carried through, that's a different story, because the legal battle inflicts trauma of itself, right? Having to go through that process is not fun. I've spoken to men and women as well that have suffered PTSD just from the court process, from the going through the legal process, being subject to that, particularly when they're wrongly accused, particularly when they know it's just BS. So that's something I've seen, and it's painful. It's bad. I would not wish that on an enemy. If you talk to people that have gone through really high contest divorce proceedings or family court proceedings, they say that is a living hell. That is the worst thing experienced in their life. None of them would go through it again, for any amount of money. So just say that out there. But I will agree with Pro, and I will say absolutely there are real victims out there. There are real problems out there. And certainly you should always seek out help, seek out appropriate legal counsel, do everything you can to extradite yourself from that scenario. However, we do have to deal in this modern era with this overcompensation on the level of, hey, the police are going to take you away. And now they're taking away some folks. They're hauling away some folks that should not be hauled away. How do we correct that? How do we fix that problem, right? If we've gone, 150% past, how do we get that 50% back to where we need to be? How do we get to justice? And we can improve our system of justice. And certainly this Jonathan Majors case may be a good opportunity to highlight some potential improvements to our system of justice.
Make sure to catch The Pro Show Thursdays 5 to 7 Eastern Time. Entertainment Explained, The Culture Curve Conquered, live with Pro and all his friends.
Exactly. And here on this channel, we just want justice. We want truth. That's what we're trying every day, is justice and truth. Even though we're completely in the entertainment sphere, that's still what we're aiming for even there. And so if Jonathan Majors is guilty of something, we hope that he's found guilty of something. If he's innocent, we hope he's found innocent. It's just that simple, folks. Now, Andrew, the thing that comes next in this email, I'm not going to read it specifically because of YouTube issues. I don't want to cause us to have some algorithm problems. But in this case, there's an issue with perhaps hands placed on a neck, if you get my drift. Mm-hmm. And in that regard, it's my understanding that authorities showed up the next day following this encounter. And so the attorney who sent me the email says that perhaps this idea that the evidence pointed towards hands having been on this woman's neck, that having had the officials come perhaps 12 to 24 hours later, that could be a really bad sign. What do you make of that?
That there was evidence of hands placed on the neck.
Well, you would have to wonder, unless that's what she said. But if there was any kind of physical evidence of that, then that's really problematic, because that sort of violence is considered cruel.
Yeah, that would be particular evidence, and particular evidence which, if they found, would be very indicative of domestic violence. It's kind of hard to choke yourself in a way, like, especially if it's to get a print there. It's possible to self-inflict that, but very difficult to self-inflict a serious choking wound. So I would say that would be something that would be problematic for this case, and would be problematic for Jonathan Majors if that's there. And that could be one of those indicia of domestic violence if that's present.
That would be something that, if it exists, if you were Disney, you would want to know that as soon as possible, because if it exists, then you need to go ahead and begin this divorcing process between yourself and the celebrity. If it doesn't exist, then, I guess you stick with him longer for sure.
Yeah, I mean, well, I know you say for sure, but in this era, with many actors, we see this in other fields, they're already fired and gotten rid of before they're fully prosecuted. You saw
It
that
seems, though, Andrew, it seems like that only applies to certain types of people. Is that fair?
Yes, and I would say perhaps Jonathan Majors falls within a category that might have other claims.
Right. If you're Ezra Miller, you can do crazy things and just be the Flash, no problem.
Ezra Miller also falls within a category in which receives extended protections. So you're talking about certain categories which Disney and Marvel has to be tread very lightly when they go there. They have to make sure, look at the due process they give them, right? Look at how much they have to investigate their contracts before they terminate it for those folks. Now compare that to anybody who does not fall within one of those categories. You're going to see they terminate them very quickly, extremely quickly. When there's even a social media allegation that isn't even filed with the police, they're terminated. That is a disparate treatment. And what this could turn into for Disney, if this proves to be valid, this could very much turn into a compare and contrast case for Disney.
Now, there are two more points. I'm only going to go through one of these, although I do want to say to this source, I really appreciate what you sent, and I especially like the last paragraph. I'll keep that between myself and the source. However, I do find this pertinent, and I want to get your take on it. One of the remaining points says, as to the timing of the trial/hearing in May and the overall outcome of the case, you need to keep in mind that the criminal justice system moves very slowly, especially in California. Delays are built into the system. Prosecutors cannot unilaterally delay a case. Only a defense attorney can do that, but they can do it for years if necessary. This case could resolve quickly, but one might not expect it to unless there's a major benefit to the defendant. And so I'm curious, Andrew, we know, we've been talking about this, that there are significant situations now where claiming something like this seems to be a tactic against a man, but we don't know if that's the case here. We don't know who the victim is. We only know that in this situation there is a victim. And that's why I don't even really like talking about it, because it's messy. But what do you make of this situation where Marvel could be in a spot where they have to move forward with production of movies and planning out these future films with Jonathan Majors presumably a part of it, and yet it may not be May at all. It could be June, July, August, or even farther forward before we have any kind of resolution.
This is messy, and that's very accurate. What that attorney said is very accurate. Criminal process can take a long time. I know a lot of people, when they see an arrest, they want to see a trial tomorrow. That's not how the process works. Unfortunately, that's not how these things go. You can have the charges laid, and then the trial doesn't happen for a year, 2 years. That's very possible. I've seen that happen, particularly once they waive the right to speedy trial. If defense counsel waives the right to a speedy trial, that thing can go for a long time. And frankly, I see no reason why he wouldn't. He hasn't been fired from a personal standpoint, as his personal interest is involved. He hasn't been fired so far for what he's been accused of. So as long as there's no conviction, I think Disney is kind of status quo, right? To stick with the status quo, keep him around. But I think it gets tricky when it goes to trial. And if there is a conviction or a settlement or a plea deal, it starts to look really bad for Disney. And if they've recorded, now they get down that road of they've got the films, they've got the recording, they've got all this, and then it's gone, right? And then you got to get rid of the guy if you find out that he is a DV, if he is a domestic abuser. I'm not even going to entertain a world in which Disney keeps somebody who's convicted of this on the books. That would be beyond even Disney. I know Disney has fallen pretty far, but I don't think there's a world in which they would keep him around if he's convicted. Would you agree with that, Pro?
Surely not. I just can't imagine it. Well, it would go against where their push is right now. It definitely goes against the Believe All Women movement.
For sure, yes, and that's why I say, I don't see that happening in a realistic sense, in like a real world. I just can't see that happening. So I would say, look, if he gets the conviction, they might have to do some reshoots or they might have to do some refilming. It's very possible to do that. I would also check his contracts right now and make sure they can edit out any likeness that they need to, or alter any likeness that they might need to.
Oh, that's a great
I would
point.
I would be checking those contracts right now like a hawk if I was Disney Legal. Although Disney Legal has been pretty busy lately, so
They have been busy and not usually in good ways.
no.
Well, Andrew, thank you so much for coming on. It's always a pleasure when you can make it. I know you're in high demand all over YouTube. You have a highly successful channel, doing great things. You've opened up a second channel. We'll talk about that in just a second. But I do hope, folks, for all of you out there, that this explained with expertise and in high detail why it is that even if someone recants certain allegations, it may not be the end of the legal process. I know that there were some issues out there where people were hearing from various commentators and news outlets, though, the recanting has happened, therefore, this ends it all. And well, that's not the case. And what we're always trying to do on this channel is to explain entertainment. It's what we always want to do. But if you want to find out all things legal being entertained and explained, well, the Legal Mindset is where you should go. Andrew, tell people where they can find you on this great, big, beautiful web out there.
Yes. So YouTube at Me Legal Mindset, Rumble at Legal Mindset as well. The Legal Mindset will work as well. You have Twitter, The Legal Mindset. Legalmindset.locals.com is my private community for all my exclusive stuff, exclusive streams, exclusive releases. And I just launched a second channel.
You didn't lose anything. You launched something. Tell us about it.
I launched it, Go East, Gentlemen, which is for folks who are interested in visiting, relocating, moving, checking out Asia. If you want to move to or think about going to Japan, to Korea, to Thailand, to Philippines, to Malaysia, Singapore, wherever. You're just interested in visiting even. Check out my channel. A lot of good information on things over here, practical information, helpful information. And I try to bring the best info out there for everybody on the web because I'm living over here in Seoul, South Korea, working remotely and having a fantastic life. And that's what I would wish for everybody else. So that's my new channel. So whether you're interested in lifestyle or whether you're interested in news, I've got something for you on one channel or the other. And as always, I'll look forward to collaborating with good people on the internet, like my good friend WDW Pro.
All right, fantastic stuff. And folks, all of those links are in the description below. Start clicking and start subscribing. You're going to be very happy that you did so. Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, keep learning, keep growing, and keep having fun.